The year is 1221. A dark storm gathers on the horizon of the Khwarezmian Empire, a tempest born from the east. Few historical events rival the chilling ruthlessness of the Mongol conquests, and nowhere was this brutal efficiency more starkly demonstrated than in the ancient city of Nishapur. This was not merely a military campaign, it was an act of calculated, devastating revenge, a chilling testament to the Mongol code of retribution, and a grim fate for the royal family of Nishapur. Our story begins not in Nishapur, but 2 years earlier, in 1219, in the distant city of Otrar. Genghis Khan, founder and great Khan of the Mongol Empire, had dispatched a trade caravan of around 450 merchants, all Muslims, and escorted by approximately 500 camels laden with gold, silver, and precious silks, to the Khwarezmian Empire. This vast empire, stretching across Central Asia and Persia, was ruled by Sultan Muhammad II. The governor of Otrar, a man named Inalchuk, a maternal uncle of Sultan Muhammad, harbored suspicions. He believed the caravan contained Mongol spies. Acting on these suspicions, and perhaps enticed by the caravan's immense wealth, Inalchuk ordered the arrest and execution of the entire retinue. Their goods were confiscated, and this single act ignited the wrath of Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan, often portrayed as a barbarian, was also a shrewd diplomat. He sent 3 envoys to Sultan Muhammad II, demanding Inalchuk's punishment and the return of his stolen goods. 2 of these envoys were Mongols, and 1 was a Muslim. Sultan Muhammad's response was an unforgivable affront. He executed the Muslim envoy and brutally shaved the beards of the 2 Mongol envoys before sending them back. This was not merely a rejection of demand, it was a profound insult to Mongol honor and a direct challenge to Genghis Khan's authority. The die was cast. Genghis Khan swore vengeance, not just on Inalchuk or the Sultan, but on the entire Khwarezmian Empire. By 1220, the full might of the Mongol war machine was unleashed, an army estimated to be between 100,000 and 200,000 warriors, comprised of cavalry, siege engineers, and strategists, swept into Transoxiana. City after city fell: Bukhara, Samarkand, Urgench. The Mongols were not just conquerors, they were instruments of terror. Their tactics were simple yet devastating. Offer terms of surrender. If accepted, the city might be spared, its inhabitants often forced into labor or military service. If resisted, the city would be sacked, its population massacred, and its structures razed. This reputation preceded them, often causing panic that led to swift surrenders. Sultan Muhammad II, an ambitious but ultimately ineffective leader against the Mongol onslaught, fled westwards, abandoning his capital, Samarkand. He sought refuge on an island in the Caspian Sea, where he died in December 1220, reportedly of pleurisy, a ruined man. His son, Jalal al-Din Mingburnu, proved to be a more capable, if ultimately overwhelmed, resistance fighter. But before Jalal al-Din could truly emerge as a threat, Nishapur, a jewel of Khorasan, awaited its fate. Nishapur, or Neshabur, was one of the largest and most prosperous cities in the Islamic world in the early 13th century. Located on a fertile plain in northeastern Iran, it was a vital hub on the Silk Road, renowned for its scholarship, vibrant arts, textile production, pottery, and rich agriculture. Its population was estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands, perhaps as many as 200,000 to 300,000, making it one of the largest cities of its time. The city's governance, like much of the Khwarezmian Empire, was decentralized, with various local rulers and officials maintaining control under the distant authority of the Sultan. The city was well fortified, boasting formidable walls and a deep moat, and its inhabitants, though not primarily soldiers, were capable of defending their homes. The first Mongol encounter with Nishapur occurred in November 1220, when a detachment under Ajibi and Subutai, 2 of Genghis Khan's most brilliant generals, passed by the city during their pursuit of Sultan Muhammad II. Nishapur, likely intimidated and seeking to avoid immediate destruction, offered tribute and submitted to Mongol suzerainty. A Mongol official, Orshena, and a Mongol tax collector were left behind to oversee the city. This temporary submission, however, did not guarantee their safety. It merely postponed the inevitable. The situation soon changed. As the main Mongol forces were occupied with the protracted siege of Gurganj, Urganch, and the pursuit of Jalal al-Din, news reached Nishapur of a significant Mongol defeat. In March 1221, Prince Jalal al-Din had ambushed and decisively defeated a Mongol contingent led by Shigi Kutuk, one of Genghis Khan's foster brothers, at the Battle of Parwan near Ghazni. This was a rare Mongol military defeat, and the news emboldened many Khwarezmian cities, including Nishapur, to rebel. The inhabitants of Nishapur, feeling the yoke of Mongol occupation, rose up, massacred the small Mongol garrison, including the Shina and tax collector, and drove out any remaining Mongol presence. This act of defiance was a declaration of war, and it sealed Nishapur's grim destiny. Genghis Khan, still reeling from the execution of his envoys and the perceived treachery of Sultan Muhammad, viewed the rebellion of Nishapur as an even greater act of defiance. The killing of his Shina was a personal insult, a direct challenge to his iron-fisted rule. His third son, Tolui Khan, known for his martial prowess and often tasked with the most brutal campaigns, was dispatched with a mission of total annihilation. Tolui, whose name literally meant mirror, was now to reflect the full, terrifying might of the great Khan's vengeance. Tolui's army arrived before Nishapur in April 1221. They encamped outside the city walls, an enormous force estimated to be around 100,000 to 150,000 men. The city was prepared for a siege, its defenses strengthened, and its people resolved. According to Persian chronicler Juvayni in his Tariq-e-Jahangushe, History of the World Conqueror, Nishapur had an arsenal of 3,000 crossbows, 300 catapults, and other siege weapons. For 3 days, the Mongols bombarded the city walls with various projectiles, including stones from catapults and flaming arrows. Yet, Nishapur's defenders held firm, but the Mongols were relentless and ingenious in siege warfare. They used captured populations, often enslaved peasants from surrounding villages, as human shields and cannon fodder, forcing them to fill moats and approach the walls. They constructed siege towers and began breaching the city's formidable defenses. The pressure was immense. On the third day of the siege, a Mongol general was killed by an arrow shot from the city walls. This incident turned an already dire situation into an absolute catastrophe for Nishapur. The slain general was reportedly Tolui Khan's son-in-law, or according to some accounts, his favorite son-in-law, or a particularly respected commander. The exact familial relationship is debated, but the fact of his death was irrefutable, and it fueled Tolui's fury and determination for complete retribution. Historical records vary slightly on the exact rank or identity, but his death solidified the Mongols' intent for unmitigated revenge. The siege continued for another 3 days, with increasing ferocity. Finally, on April 10, 1221, the Mongols breached the city walls. The defenders were overwhelmed. What followed was not a typical sack, but a premeditated program of utter destruction, a dark page in the annals of warfare. Upon entry, all resistance was brutally crushed. But unlike other cities where a portion of the population might be spared for skilled labor, Nishapur was marked for total cleansing. Tolui had received specific instructions from Genghis Khan. Every living being in Nishapur was to be killed. This was to be a message, a horrifying lesson to any who dared defy the Mongol Empire. The Mongols systematically massacred the entire population. According to Juvayni, the walls were leveled with the ground, and the whole city was reduced to dust as a punishment for its rash behavior. But the true horror lay in the detail. Not only were men, women, and children slaughtered without mercy, but even the dogs and cats were killed. This was a deliberate effort to erase Nishapur from the map, to leave nothing alive. The sheer scale of the massacre is staggering. Juvayni records that 400 scribes were assigned the grim task of counting the dead. After the preliminary count, the total was said to have reached 1,747,000. While this number is undoubtedly an exaggeration, a product of chroniclers seeking to emphasize the horror, it does reflect the immense magnitude of the slaughter. Modern historians estimate Nishapur's population at the time to be around 200,000 to 300,000. Even with this lower estimate, the systematic annihilation of so many people in a single event is horrifying. Amidst this carnage, The fate of Nishapur's royal family, or at least the prominent local aristocracy and ruling elite connected to the Khwarezmian Sultanate, was particularly brutal. It is crucial to understand that royal family in this context refers not to the main lineage of Sultan Muhammad, who had fled, but to the local ruling class, often established by the Khwarezmian Shah, or exercising considerable autonomy. These individuals, seen as representatives of the rebellious city and responsible for the killing of the Mongol Shina, faced no quarter. They were singled out for particularly cruel deaths, sometimes involving elaborate torture before execution, to serve as a public spectacle and a warning. Accounts suggest that prominent figures were often decapitated, their heads displayed, or subjected to being trampled by horses, a common Mongol method of execution for those deemed to have committed significant offenses. Women and children were not spared. Often, women from prominent families were subjected to various forms of abuse before being killed. Children, regardless of status, were typically put to the sword. This indiscriminate slaughter underscored the complete lack of mercy and the total nature of the Mongol revenge. The Mongols believed in collective punishment. The entire city was responsible for the actions of its inhabitants, and thus the entire city, from the highest to the lowest, had to pay the price. Following the massacre, the city was utterly demolished. The Mongols systematically razed buildings, diverted canals, and plowed over the land where Nishapur once stood. Barley was sown on the ground where the city had been, symbolizing a complete erasure, a deliberate act to turn a vibrant cultural center into a barren field. This was not just destruction, it was an act of complete cultural and urban annihilation. The only exceptions to this total annihilation were a few artisans and craftsmen, who were sometimes spared and taken into slavery for the Mongol Empire. These skilled individuals were considered valuable assets, but their lives were forfeit to their new masters. A small, select group might also have been spared for their perceived usefulness, but for the vast majority there was no escape. This systematic obliteration of Nishapur left an indelible mark on history. It became a byword for Mongol brutality. The message was clear: defy the great Khan at your peril, for the consequences would be absolute. The Khwarezmian Empire, already reeling, effectively ceased to exist as a unified entity after this point. Its major cities were gone, its infrastructure shattered, and its people scattered or enslaved. The long-term impact on the region was profound. Nishapur, once a center of learning and trade, took centuries to recover, and it never truly regained its former glory. Though a new city eventually arose near the old site, the memory of the massacre lingered. The demographic, economic, and cultural fabric of Khorasan was irrevocably altered. This event, alongside the destruction of other major cities like Merv and Urgench, contributed to a deep and lasting trauma in the collective memory of the Persian people. Why such extreme measures? For the Mongols, it was a combination of factors: pragmatic military strategy, a deeply ingrained code of honor and vengeance, and a desire to instill absolute terror. Pragmatically, utterly destroying a rebellious city ensured it would never rise again to plague Mongol armies. From the perspective of honor, the killing of Mongol envoys and the Nishapur Shina were unpardonable offenses that demanded an equally severe response, and the terror generated by such massacres aided future conquests, often leading cities to surrender without a fight. The story of Nishapur is a stark reminder of the horrors of war and the extreme lengths to which vengeance can lead. It illustrates the effectiveness of the Mongol war machine, not just in its military prowess, but in its psychological warfare. The annihilation of Nishapur served as a chilling example, a monument to the price of defiance against the might of Genghis Khan. The city, its people, and its royal family became silent victims in one of history's most brutal chapters. Their fate a grim warning etched forever in the annals of time. The soil of Nishapur, once fertile and teeming with life, forever absorbed the blood and tears of its fallen, a testament to the cataclysm that descended upon it in April 1221. This wasn't just a siege, it was the deliberate, meticulous execution of a city. This wasn't merely a defeat, it was an erasure. The Khwarezmian world would never be the same. The dust from Nishapur's leveled walls settled across history, a grim shroud over an empire undone. The reverberations of that day echo still, a stark reminder of the fragility of civilization in the face of absolute power and vengeance unbridled. The Mongols had delivered their message. Resistance was indeed futile, and the cost total. This was a campaign of utter devastation, orchestrated from the highest levels of Mongol command. Genghis Khan's personal directive ensured that Nishapur's destruction would be absolute. The death of Tolui's son-in-law provided a personal impetus for an already decided course of action, an additional layer of fury to the calculated annihilation. The chroniclers of the era, though sometimes prone to exaggeration, captured the essence of the event. A deliberate act of genocide on a scale rarely seen. The systematic nature of the slaughter, down to the animals, distinguishes Nishapur from other sieges. It was a complete unmaking, a city wiped from existence with chilling thoroughness, and in its unmaking, the story of Nishapur became a cautionary tale, a legend of terror that solidified the Mongols' reputation and shaped the course of Asian history for centuries. The silent fields over Nishapur's ruins told a story far louder than words. Centuries later, archaeological excavations would uncover layers of ash and human remains, grim confirmations of the chronicles. The memory of Nishapur's tragic end persists, a testament to the brutal efficiency of the Mongol Empire and the devastating consequences of imperial resistance.